Hello, and welcome to my lesson redesign. I am here to cover all the material about a new lesson that I've revamped up from the Sharpen Design website, and I have a lot of information that I need to get through, so let's get started. So, with my original plan, this was from an initial design that was coming from the Sharpen Design website. And the generated idea that came from it is to design an app icon for a parkour academy. So, just as a side note, I used to be a heavy practitioner of parkour, and I find to be a very fun physical activity to work with. That being said, I find this to be a little bit of a challenging activity that a student could do because they may not necessarily know what parkour is. So, just a simple search up on how to be able to generate some ideas on how to design an icon would definitely work. I provided some visual aid just to get an idea. It's basically just sort of like outdoor free for all gymnastics. Now, just to get started with this, this lesson is formatted to comprehend the context and objectives. Since the app is for a parkour academy, the icon should reflect the energy, agility, and urban essence of parkour. Being in the case that it makes more sense to be able to do parkour in an urban environment than it would be in a rural environment. The Adobe Express and Canvas are going to be our primary backing sources for using the graphics adjustments for this app icon assignment, because this will be a good incentive to let students become familiar with Express and Canvas, which are both incredibly user friendly and also very colorful in their presentations and their interface. So, with this being said, they may draw. I apologize. This should say may. They may draw, shape, cut, and color fill the icon if it fits into the lesson criteria within class time on their tablets or on computers. After refining their work, the students should export their work to a shared viewing space such as Google Classroom. And I do want to point out that this is an individual activity. Given that the aptitude is just in the whole ballpark of just trying to design a simple app logo, they may use any of these sources along with their given technology, whether it be on a tablet or a given computer. And I would say that at most or at minimum, it could be given take 30 minutes for them to be able to complete this. Now, to draw upon the answers that were given from the questions presented on the initial assignment referral sheet, this is marks up from the 4 bullet points or square points that were originally presented as questions, and I've constituted the answers to coincide with them. So, in starting off with it, we have the initial question of why would you use this with your students in your current upcoming lessons? I answered, design challenges are a practical and engaging way to apply knowledge and skills in a real world context. They can be used to assess students' ability to solve problems, work under time constraints, apply creativity and critical thinking. Followed by, how would you use this? And I answered, in a design or creativity focused lesson, I would present students with a similar design challenge. I, um, I'd brief them on the context and objectives and set a 30-minute time limit for creating an app icon, as I've previously mentioned. Students would brainstorm, design, and present their concepts, receiving feedback from peers and myself. This is followed by the question, what are the learning objectives you want to satisfy? The answer, apply learning objectives of this design challenge would be to, within full bullet points, 1. Apply design principles and creative thinking in a practical context. 2. Develop the ability to work under time constraints. 3. Encourage peer review and feedback. 4. Foster adaptability and quick decision making in design. And 5. Develop presentation and communication skills in explaining their design choices. This is followed by the last question, what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs, that you want students to take away from experiencing a design challenge? And here I answered, and following up to it, the KSAs that I want students to take away from experiencing a design challenge would include 1. Understanding of design principles, color theory, and the role of icons in app design. 2. Graphic design using design software, time management, and presenting design concepts. And 3. Creativity, adaptability, problem solving, and the ability to incorporate feedback into design improvements. So this is all in par with the original lesson plan that was designated from an idea that I had, and I cross-referenced it from what was generated through Sharpen Design. Okay, so moving on. Now, this is the revamped lesson plan. Now, I've taken the idea of what I originally had from the other lesson, and I've sort of added a little bit more of a one based aptitude of how you could sort of step up your game from a previous lesson. And therefore, in reference for my original design of the lesson into this new design lesson, which is also supported from Sharp and Design, is design a homepage for a website about parkour training. While it is a drastic turn from app icon design, the students are not required to know the functionality of a website interface, only design the homepage. Basically, I just want to make it a point that they don't necessarily need to build a full-fledged website. Just in the sense where if they were to construct a simple homepage, what would it look like? What are some of the features on there? And what are some of the points that can be used to link to other parts of the overall website, even though they don't necessarily have to necessarily link them there. So, in getting to the groundwork on this, there is some manner of similarities of the answers that I have pointing out here that are very similar to the previous original plan. But well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in just a moment. In referencing this particular lesson plan, and I've also included an inverse screenshot of some example sites. They're a little bit small, but these are taken from these are taken as sample screenshots from other pages. This one in particular is definitely a great example for what could be used the uh, as the interface or home web page for a parkour-based website. But again, just as an example. So, students will gather into groups and compare homepages of well known sites and combine their thoughts of shared homepage elements into their design. I do want to point out it does have to be in of itself a legitimate site. They can't necessarily utilize something that would be used more as a tool rather than like a homepage website. So, for example, sites like Bing or Google being search engines don't actually count. They may sketch a rough draft on paper and use it for the initial design. I would have students use an open-based software to get a feel for web page construction, such as Site123, and may use Canva and Shutterstock for importing their designs onto the page, with administrator/IT permission, of course, just so they'll be able to get the premier access to utilize the page just for the sake of practice without necessarily having to pay for any of the software. And Site 123 is absolutely 100% a beginners based website, which would work for most grade school, middle school, and high school students. This would take 2 to 3 classes to complete, but students should export their web pages over to a shared server like Discord so that the rest of the class may see each other's work once they are all finished. So, in the case of importing their designs, is that they could use filler-based image from Shutterstock, and can use Canvas for the initial creativity design. But they could use sort of piggyback on both of these resources to try to create something uniquely interesting and eye captivating as part of the building onto their design intellect. So, in building on from the answers from questions addressed in assignment 5, as I was saying before, the answers for some of these are a little bit similar because I've only changed up only a little bit more than what was previously referenced in the original plan design. So here, what decides from a little bit more of an advanced task for students to complete, this is essentially something that they could sort of amp up their learning to essentially help them out with advancing from designing an app icon to designing a full-fledged web page, which could definitely come in handy in the future, depending on their a career choice, because website development is certainly in the rise. But I apologize, I'm getting aside from the. So, in going back with the answers, building on from the previous revamped lesson is why would you use it with your students in the current upcoming lessons? The answer: I would use the design challenge to help students apply their knowledge of web design principles, user experience, and visual communication in a practical context. It allows them to exercise their creativity and problem solving skills. The second one: how would you use this? Answer: in a web designer digital marketing course, albeit as part of what you could consider based on an elective or perhaps even a college based class, I would present the design challenge to students. I provide the context, goals, and constraints and set a time limit for creating a homepage design. Students would work individually or in teams, creating a homepage prototype. Now, I referenced before when I was writing out these answers about working individually or in teams. I did say that this would be better if they were to work with at least one other person or at least in a group of 3 or 4, but there are some elements where they could still utilize individual work if it's going to contribute to the overall group work. Like, for example, if each individual within a group is responsible for a certain task to put together the whole website, such as color grading, putting the right text in, exporting, and all that jazz. All right. Next, we have what are the learning objectives you want to satisfy? The answer: the learning objectives for this design challenge would include 1. Applying web design principles. Students should demonstrate their understanding of layout, typography, color, and visual hierarchy in web design. 2. User-centered design. Students should focus on creating a user-friendly experience with correct navigation and content organization, because usually you'll get some good rep with your website based on first impressions. If the initial homepage is easy on the eyes and easy to navigate and use, it's more likely the user is going to come back to said site or is going to have a lot more fun and engaging time in interacting with the rest of the site. 3. Creativity and problem solving. Students should come up with a visually appealing and engaging homepage that caters to the target audience. 4. Presentation and communication. Students should be able to present and explain their design choices effectively. This is followed by the last question. What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities, KSAs, that you want students to take away from experiencing the design challenge? The answer: the KSAs I want students to take away from experiencing this design challenge include 1. A deep understanding of web design principles and user experience concepts. 2. Proficiency in using design tools, creating prototypes, and implementing design practices. 3. Creative problem solving, adaptability, and effective communication of decisions from the student's part. So, in essence of working within the whole scope of a team, is everyone is giving their own contributions to the overall web page. Whether it be some person would have their say on what would be the best colors, or someone would give their own say as to what would be the best supported imagery to help out with the appeal of the website and catering towards the target audience. And then there's also just a matter of being able to properly export them and knowing about how to uh, export the file in such a way where it wouldn't cause any future complications. All right, so we covered both of the original and revamped lesson plans. So what I want to build on next from this is redesign the lessons based on Sharp Design, as previously mentioned, is the key components of the original and revamped lessons. Now, I've generated what I believe is to be 3 prominent points with how this activity extremely relates to one another, which is it's learning about the nature of working individually versus working with others. You're exposing yourselves towards dependency and independency on how one could get work done. And then there's also designing based on descriptions and designing based on shared knowledge. This is where it comes from. You could get your knowledge from textbook or classroom notes, but you could also gain your knowledge just from word of mouth and communicating through one's own peers. Now, obviously, these might seem a little bit differential based on their descriptions, but if there's one really penultimate truth to this is that both activities call upon a practical, hands-on approach to learning, helping students apply theoretical knowledge, where they imply the whole ideas of writing, logic, logos, pathos, and egos, if you want to go that far, on being able to put together their knowledge and exercising their brain to let creative juices flow when the time arises to get a task done. So this brings me over to the old plan versus the new plan comparison. Now, if you follow me on this, is that they both have their positives and they both have their negatives. With the positives is that what works well with it is it helps students understand the challenges they may face in their chosen fields and develop skills needed to overcome them. This comes from the whole notion that there might be a certain task or a certain part of their task that they would have a hard time navigating. Like, for example, if they have a hard time utilizing some of the text boxes or formatting on things such as Canvas or even any Adobe software, they they could over use their knowledge on how they could apply what works well for them and use their general knowledge of what they already know to their advantage to make it still more presentable. They don't necessarily have to make it a full-fledged spectacle just to get their message across, which brings over into the new plan positives. It's supposed to promote creativity, critical thinking, and effective communication, preparing students for real world challenges in design and other creative fields. This is supposed to be, in a way, um, building up the whole skill set of teamwork, of combining ideas through designing, not necessarily innovation, so to say, but just from the idea of designing and communicating with your peers through learning what works well and what may not work well, or at least wanting to work with an alternative and getting necessarily peer review back. Because this brings on to the whole notion of the old plan negatives. And obviously the biggest factor here, or biggest low rate factor here, is it doesn't improve nor build upon social skills, and it's going to increase the likelihood of wanting to go through self-dependency within classwork. Now, if you understand the work they have to do and you know how to get it done, that's perfectly fine. However, it always does help to be able to to build up the notion that if there's other ways that you could get your work done in just as effective, if not more manner, then you really want to hear it out through your peers. So going through it solo does seem to be a little bit more of a hindrance if you have to do the work all yourself. Not to mention, you might end up biting off more than you can chew based on a certain assignment that will require more than one person to help you with. That being said, with the new plan negatives, is I remember reading out here a student's creative insight may not develop due to the multitude of shared concepts, and one may not be able to use their own thoughts if others are present. Basically, what I was getting at here through this idea is you may be able to have your contributions towards group work in a design lesson plan, but that doesn't always mean it's going to be like the top of the line, best solid answer towards a given task or assignment or situation to overcome. If anything, more times than not, your opinion, your line of work and credibility could go a little bit too far under where it doesn't necessarily reflect itself or your own intellect within a final product. But in the end, though, you still contributed to it overall, and you want to make sure that there is a sense of equilibrium amongst going through with the new plan of of co of codependent work on a much more difficult task, based on the basis of an old plan that would involve working with what you already know in a in a solo task. So the ultimately it kind of builds onto the whole notion that like you might be given a new task that can be a little bit more advanced, and therefore you need to be able to build on your knowledge with what you already know, and you might have to be ready to work with other peers or someone else to be able to finish the task at hand. So with all that said, I believe I've been able to say everything I need to say about this given design plan. Um, but I actually would really jump on the whole notion that if it was a topic on the whole notion of parkour, I would be really, really invested in the whole topic, and I wouldn't overshoot anything because it is by itself an interesting topic. And I do have to thank Sharpen Design, although totally random in its own right. It does seem to generate a lot of interesting responses, which can definitely catch the attention of some students. I mean, it certainly caught my attention, which is why I wanted to use it as the main topic at hand. But thank you for taking a look at this presentation. The image sources that I got from this slide is just from Shutterstock, and the whole website sampler image came from this link right here. But thank you for taking a look at this, and yeah, I hope you got a lot of information out of it. And I hope to work on this assignment again soon. And yep, that's about it. Have a good one.